Awesome. So kia ora and welcome. Welcome to Waiotapu Thermal Wonderland. My name is Dave and I'm one of the guides here at Waiotapu, and welcome to Lady Knox Geyser. But before I talk about our lovely lady, there are just a couple safety issues to cover. Now for those of you heading to the main park after the eruption, please be aware you're entering an active volcanic area, and for your safety it's very important, please stay on the formed pathways, follow signage, and closed footwear is recommended. Thank you. So in the 1800s, it was estimated that there were around 130 active geysers in this region. But by the 1970s, sadly, that number had been reduced to only about 15. Now the story behind Lady Knox Geyser began just over 100 years ago. Now, at that time, this area was nothing more than a barren wilderness covered in a light shrub and bush. And not too far away from where folks parked your vehicles this morning, there was a prison. In fact, it was New Zealand's first open prison camp. Now the prisoners set there were required to clear that shrub and bush to make way for the planting of pine trees. And naturally, it was a group of these prisoners that came across this clearing. And again, what you are seeing now is not what you would have seen then. All that was here was a beautiful, clear, hot spring with a little ledge around it, about so high. Now to give you an idea of what it looked like, but on a much smaller scale, if you look over at the rock formation to my right. Now if you look carefully, you will see a shrubby looking plant, quite literally growing out of the rock. Now that is manuka, or New Zealand tea tree, and its base marks the edge of what was then another hot spring. So 100 years ago, prison life in New Zealand was rather primitive. Those prisoners were around a half a day's bumpy horse ride from Rotorua, and they did not have the luxuries of life. And they certainly did not have access to constant hot water. So a group of these prisoners thought it would be a good idea to use the hot water spring they had found to wash their dirty clothes in. Now that would save them the bother of having to gather firewood to boil water to wash their clothes. So one day, a group of these prisoners were down here washing their clothes in the hot spring. So they pulled their clothes out, scrubbed them up with some soap, dipped them back in to rinse them, and what happened next is they got one heck of a fright. That hot spring erupted, their clothes went flying into the air, and they went running into the bush behind me. We now know that the soap broke the surface tension of the top level of cooler water. So below my feet, there are two chambers of water. Now the bottom chamber, at a temperature well over 150 degrees Celsius, that's held at bay by the top cooler level of water, just under 90 degrees Celsius. And by breaking surface tension, that allows the two temperatures of water to mix, which then flashes into steam, causing our geyser here to erupt. So, here I have in my hand a bag of an environmentally friendly soap-like substance called surfactant. Now this has been chemically engineered for us to do exactly the same thing, but to leave behind no negative effects on the environment. So I'll put this in and we'll see what happens. Boom. No, so I have enough time to talk to you about what's happening down here. So within a few minutes, we shall see some bubbles starting to form around the opening of the vent. And as the hot water forces its way up through the cooler levels, we shall see the water beginning to surge as she builds up to her first full eruption. Now, at this point, I may have some skeptics in the crowd saying, hey, that is not a natural geyser. But I can assure you folks it is. And even if I did not use the surfactant, she would still erupt on her own accord. But predicting when she'll do so is almost impossible. So for tourism and tourists such as yourself to enjoy, we've been inducing her for the last 80 years or so. And when she does erupt, there'll be a bit of water hanging around in the air. Some of that water may drift over towards the crowd, but don't worry folks, by the time it gets to you, it'll be nice and cool, but with a slight soapy feel. Now to get something that looks like that over there, to look like this right here, what happened was those prisoners came down here, placed rocks around the base of this hot spring to try and create a chimney. Now the reason for doing so was purely for their own entertainment. In those days they did not have TVs, computers and so on. They had to create their own fun. Now, by creating a chimney, that forced the water into a more narrow opening, which created a stronger jet of water, ultimately sending their clothes even higher. And every time there's an eruption, the water flowing over the area here gets evaporated by that very hot sun and the wind, leaving behind the mineral silica, which is responsible for her white colour and shape. Now the geyser, she's named after Lady Constance Knox. Now in New Zealand's history, quite honestly, she wasn't very important, but her father was. Her father was a gentleman called Lord Ranfurly, and he was New Zealand's 15th Governor-General. And in May of 1903, he was out here with his family, inspecting the prison to see how they were going on. To mark the occasion, his daughter, Lady Constance Knox, christened the geyser, and that's how the association comes about. So just a quick bit of geology about our geyser. She is over 150 years old. The natural reservoir below her holds 30,000 litres of water. The natural eruption cycle is somewhere between 36 and 72 hours. She can erupt for up to 1 hour, reaching varying heights of between 10 and 20 metres high. But how high she does go and how long she plays for is purely dependent on barometric pressure and the amount of water she can gather from the ground in a 24-hour period. Now, you can find geysers in 3 other main areas throughout the world. The largest group is in Yellowstone National Park in the United States of America, with another group in Kamchatka in Russia, and with a further cluster in Iceland. Now, it is actually Iceland that gives us that word geyser, which in English simply means to gush forth. Down here in New Zealand, we do not call these geysers. Now, a geyser to us is a two-legged elderly gentleman, and not one of these. So if you have any questions about the geyser or about Waitapu in general, please do not hesitate to ask either me or any of the other staff back at the Visitor Centre. We'll be glad to help. So please take plenty of photos and enjoy your day here with us at Waitapu Thermal Wonderland. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Sometimes it quite well, Just come in.
Come on, lady.
Я видео снимаю.
Я тоже.
Я залью его и дам суп твоей маме. Иди за
Да, не слышу.
Ага. О боже. О май гад.
Оно бурлит.
Оно живое. Представь, реально, ребята офигели, когда уронили туда мыло, и такое началось. Давай, давай, детка. Уху!
It's reached its maximum, so
А зачем мне это?
Давай. О, еще не все. Что-то все разочарованно уходят. Трибуны опустели. Исход матча понятен.
Я так понимаю, он потом так долго еще оргазмирует. Не, зачем меня сон?
Я сползаю оттуда.
Кто на GoPro снимает?
Я у него видел такой крутой штативчик для GoPro? Такая треноженка маленькая.
Хейтер-серфер серьезный. Если он хипстер.